Jimmy Cabs taped the broadcast 5150 interview series in Bulldozer magazine. This is a very Jesus fucking A, man. This is one of these moments where I realize how time flies goes by. We're here at Eagle Rock at the All-Star Lanes with the Iconoclast. I haven't said that in over 30 years.
Probably.
Okay, Yout and Greg, how you guys doing?
We're doing fine. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, definitely.
For those of you that are kind of perplexed, this isn't the Iconoclast from Australia. This isn't the Iconoclast from, I think, New Hampshire. This isn't the Iconoclast from God knows where else. This is the real Iconoclast. And my first question that I've been wanting to ask you for over 30 years is, what is peace punk? In when did you start, 81?
81.
What is peace punk in 1981, and how do you define it now in 2015?
How much digital space do you have on your recorder?
I need to know, 'cause I'm confused still.
Well, in all fairness, it's kind of a title that was put on us. I mean, we probably embraced it and probably spoke about it. But, it's so big and broad, and for some people it means one thing, and for others it means something different. I think it's just a collective consciousness about how you look at situations militarily or the conflicts in the world, and you think that perhaps your position on it isn't the prevailing popular position, and you'd prefer to see a more peaceful resolution to the world, and maybe some dialogue versus bombs. And certainly when we were young kids, growing up in the 70s and 80s, there was real threats and really, as much as the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was also the very strong and real possibility of annihilation via nuclear weapons. So I think for that, it was just kind of shaped our disposition in global affairs, and how perhaps dialogue is always better than weapons. And that's kind of where our position's been. I think that it's just as true now as it was back then. And that's just the way I see it.
For us, I think it was like instinctual when we, if I may say so, that we were attracted to this idea of that we felt we didn't belong, right? So punk encompassed that, and punk rock was that kind of like a kind of stepping stone for us to become critical thinkers. And so when we first emerged, we were actually very influenced by the straight edge movement, by Minor Threat. So we were actually we came out first a little bit straight edge with the X's on our hands, and but we, and it was like a process, and I forgot, I think it was through Bean, or I don't recall exactly, but we were exposed to the English critical thinking punk movement of Discharge, Crass, and stuff like that. So we were really enthralled by, honestly, about the directness about talking about future and the impending doom, and that we have to fight. We have the right, fight the system, fight back, fight the system, fight back. So it gave us, it planted a seed of critical. A dialogue, critical analysis, critical thinking. So we were totally inspired by that, and I think our music reflects that passion and that energy of what we were trying to do. So as naive perhaps we were at the time, we knew that it was just in the end. So like I think, like Greg mentioned, we're still formulating, we're still learning. These old dogs are still learning, you know what I mean? But we also understood that the general understanding of it was for a better world, a world of peace, a world where we didn't have to live without nuclear arms, which still exists, and still we live under that doom, but no one talks about it anymore, but it's still there. So that's how we were born, and that's how we were emerged, and that energy is what fueled us. And I think it translated into our music, if I may say ourselves, because we had, as the short time that we existed, we had an intense following, and now that we were asked to come back and do shows, so that's kind of, I guess, testament to that fact, if you will.
Well, this is what's interesting for me. Back in 1983, I was a very young adolescent who was very subversive, very isolated, and felt, like you mentioned, didn't belong. But even at that time, very socially aware of what was going on. For some of you weren't even born. It was during the Reaganomics era, during the initial attack on the middle class. At the same time, the nuclear threat. Okay, and the beginning seeds of corporate greed and the cancer that spread through all over Central, South America, Asia. It was a pivotal time, And just like in the 50s and just like in the 50s, in the 60s and fuck the 70s, because everybody was stoned or coked out, music was doing the talking and teaching the young. My question to you now that it's been 30-something years later and Iconoclast is still as relevant as ever, okay? You could play the songs from the EP in 1983 and it's still as relevant as ever, except now, my opinion, the dumbing of society has taken effect. People are more preoccupied with their iPhones. No one is reading. They're phasing out books. Propaganda in the media is force-fed. No one cares about society anymore. Everyone's self-engulfed with themselves. And humanity as a whole, we're accepting having bombs dropping on innocent kids. There's a presidential candidate right now racially making comments, regardless of how he tries to spin it. The middle class is under attack. Is anybody going to listen to you now in 2015? And do you still have that same anger as 1983? Because in 1983, I was listening. Do you think anybody's listening? No. And if so, what do you plan to do?
I think you speak to a lot of things. Like for us,
hell yeah, we go all night.
Yeah, exactly. You're right about the music. I think I would liken that the underground, sharing of information that was going on through music was the internet of that time, because you had a complacent populace, especially youth of our era, were not thinking about the things we were thinking about and talking about, but it was because of the direct impact that music had, especially opening up crass booklets, finding out about Salvador, finding out about death squads, finding out all kinds of information and books, references to Bakunin, Kropotkin, like a lot of things. But now, fast forward, like you say, it's almost inverted. I think almost the saturation. I would say that the saturation of so much information has actually dumbed down and even created like the millennial. And of course I'm not blanketing it, but just the vibe is that it's more like, damn, I see so much to know so much that I'd rather just party my life away. So you know what I mean? Because that's, man, like it's just the vibe. Yeah. So
but you can't be.
But right. But there are like sparks of like, no, man, we got to try to organize. We got to try to see what we can do. And I think now, I think Greg and I have had these conversations where like now it's just down to intention. Like we play with the intention of a better world. We don't define what that world is. We don't espouse to know all the answers, but we know it's about intention, and either it's it's gonna do what it's gonna do, and we're gonna just hope for the best. But it's really about intention now. That's how we're addressing it, by just having our intentions for a better world now, like, if you will. So I mean, that's kind of like, because we're like, like I said, we're not espousing to know all the answers, and we're still learning, but we're also still bringing that need, that cultivating critical thinking and a direction and a path for all of us. Like for anyone to reflect on their own. So I don't know.
What about you, Greg? I mean, are we just angry old men now, or? And does it bother you that this energy that we have and this topic, the youth should be fucking up at arms? And what happened to punk rock? I mean, the whole, Iraq, the whole Afghanistan, the whole Halliburton. I could go on and on. Where's punk rock? Where was the voice of sanity and rebellion? I mean, do I need to be on Prozac again? I mean, what's going on here?
I think that we're the older generation now, so I think every older generation looking down on the new generation.
I am that guy.
We're those guys.
Yep.
And I think we're always looking down and admonishing them for what they're doing or what they're not doing, and I think that it's a privileged position, but it's also an incorrect position. They have their own language, they have their own ways of going about it. I think that the apathy that we view maybe from a different perspective is, for us, looks like apathy, but for them it could be transformative. That could be just a different, more subtle form of protest. The kids that I see, at least, are in what we'd view as just being lazy or disconnected. That's a form of just saying, look, this world's not for me. And although they're not saying it strongly, and although they're not saying it with banners or with shirts, they're saying, I think I'm just going to go out and slackline, or I'm just going to go out and jump in a lake and be with my friends and skateboard and create art for my own, and I'm going to put it on Snapchat, or I'm going to put it on Instagram. And although these seem to be vapid, mindless activities, who am I? I'm 50 years old. I mean, it's not for me to say that what they're doing is any less subversive or rebellious. Their ways of doing it are just saying, I'm not going this route anymore. And I think there's a lot of encouraging signs. Yes, there is a lot of vapid, idiotic elements to the digital media, but that could be said about any generation. The initial seeds of rebellion, I mean, they were probably fraught with a lot of shortcomings. Yeah. If you were taking the disposition of equality for women in the early protest movements, women's voices were not being heard. If you're taking the disposition of equality for homosexuals, that voice wasn't being heard. So it's still very much a very inequitable protest. And I just think now, I mean, it's just a different. I think it's transformative. I think it's something that perhaps we don't understand. Maybe we're not meant to understand it. I think kids are angry. I think they have a protest in them. I think they have a defiance in them. Our message, I think, is still relevant, however we get it across. I think the way we play still speaks very clearly about how we think about it. I think that we have, surprisingly, kids that weren't born when we were around still find some compelling reason to want to watch us. And that's really encouraging and very cool and really quite an interesting privilege for us.
Yeah,
and it charges us up. I mean, that's actually quite nice. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can look at it in a very bleak way, and I've spent most of my life looking at things in a very bleak way. But in my better frame of mind, I like to think that there's some sort of positive element to that. Yeah. And that's my take on it.